Hello, everyone. Welcome to the HockeyBuzzcast. Sorry, we've been out a little bit here. Crazy stuff going on. Holiday week, of course, in the States. But an important week for everybody involving rumors and something like that. So we're going to get to a lot of rumor chart talks today and a lot of crazy fun stuff for you. But first,
a lot of Thanksgiving prep. It's so fun. So much fun to cut celery and onions. Okay. You know, I've been driving since I was 18 years old. I've had my share of little bumps and bruises and, little accidents. And on Saturday, I have a brand new Honda HR-V. It's six months old. I love it. It's been great. And I'm on a major thoroughfare in the Buffalo area, Niagara Falls, actually, and stop at a red light, and somebody in an SUV hits me from behind at a rather higher rate of speed. Thankfully, I was okay. I was wearing my seatbelt, all that stuff. But then begins the fun. Not because they didn't dispute it. They hit me from behind. They took full responsibility, and their insurance company says, "Okay, we'll bring you into one of our locations." And they gave me a number of options. I chose the location, and they said, "There's this express, like so and so express for getting your car estimated and repaired as quickly as possible." So I take it in. They call me back a couple hours later, and they said, "Well, the damage is extensive. The tailgate, the bumper, the exhaust, this and that, the entire trunk of my vehicle was accordioned back and forth, and the estimate is $6,800." And I'm like, okay, I know that it's a brand new car, so everything's more expensive. But then the word express departed here, because they told me the estimated time of repair will be 3 weeks.
Yep.
3 friggin' weeks.
Remember, mine was 2 months last year when the tree fell on my car.
Funny. Like I have a car that's in the shop right now and has been in the shop since Halloween. So someone hit my door, and it was just a small little thing, and it's still there. It's like they're like, it's crazy. I mean, I'm driving a rental car around, which is fine, but I'm sure your company has that, or your insurance probably has rental car coverage or something like that.
Well, I mean, their insurance is paying for it 100%. So the only thing I'm really going to be responsible for is the gas. In the vehicle. But the thing I'm worried about is I cross the border constantly, and I'm going up on Saturday for the Leafs game against Philadelphia.
Nothing going in a rental car, right? Yeah,
right. And I'm driving around in a Nissan with Kansas plates. I'm just imagine the border guard asking me, "Where's Dorothy and the Tin Man?"
Don't you know those? Don't you know those border cards by now?
Yeah, although when they scan my license, sure, but I'm driving a different car. They probably think I'm a drug mule or something.
Right, they might. My quick thing is the other day I bought tickets for Schitt's Creek is actually doing like a speaking tour. And so I bought tickets for that. Well, I love the cast. Eugene Levy is a legend. And Catherine O'Hara just won an honor
Order of Canada. Yeah.
She is the best, Catherine.
And she's so good. Like, forget about Home Alone. I don't care. I never saw any of those. But anything she's ever been in, Best in Show, all those movies.
I think the best thing for sorry to interrupt, but I think the best thing for her is probably Waiting for Guffman, though. That's like
Guffman's real good too. Yeah.
Catherine O'Hara and Waiting for Guffman. I mean, not to mention all the old SCTV stuff in the way back.
All that. I mean, she's a legend.
She is crazy.
Let me ask you a question. Is all that Canadian comedy to you guys what British comedy is to Canadians?
No, it's all, you know what? It doesn't mean anything anymore since Netflix, since we all get BBC now and we all get your Canadian shows are more Americanized than you realize. That's the thing. Because you have guys like Eric McCormack who, has been playing over here for years, and then he starts up the Travelers. Other than the occasional, I detect a Canadian accent, the shows are fairly similar now in the way that they're laid out.
There's a quirkiness in comedy, though, that's different.
No, I think it's interesting.
Like, that's sort of what I mean. The face is familiar, like the cross-pollination is familiar.
I don't think there's much quirkiness as like in the John Candy era when it was new.
Yeah.
I think now it's sort of like you get the occasional because you're mentioning places in Canada, or they did have an episode about unpasteurized milk. But other than that,
My mom would not let me watch. When I was a kid, my mom would not let me watch Saturday Night Live, but I was allowed to watch SCTV. It's pretty funny.
There was this.
It was definitely lighter, and more. I think more not politer, but just not. I guess not as raw. You know, sometimes.
Not anymore. That's gone away.
It was more surreptitious in its references. I mean, the Kids in the Hall and SCTV were sort of Canadian centric. That but I don't like. Peter, I pick up on a lot of the CBC stuff, like This Hour is 22 Minutes and some of these shows that are on now, Mr. D, and I don't think they're funny.
I don't find Jerry D to be a very good comedian, so I'm not really a fan of his. This Hour 22 Minutes is very specifically Canadian. Like that is that you've got to be Canadian to grasp that. But I mean, one of the other ones that I know Eck was a big fan of was Corner Gas. Right. That's I mean, there's a quirkiness to that's Canadian. You'd never make that show in the United States. Like it's got its own quirky Canadian aspect.
Yeah, I think there's probably some of that. Like, some of the British shows, they're a little more polished, but other than scenery, I don't find a big difference. But I did in a little bit of a comedy one, Man Down, Dan Davies, the really large comic. He's done 2 or 3 series and he's really good at it. And that's where I think you get a big difference with the Canadian. To be honest, not that big a difference anymore.
Well, I tell you, the quality, some of the show, some of the dramas, like the Murdoch mysteries or stuff like that, is compared to
the BBC has American TV beat. Let's be real about
that.
Yeah,
well, and that's the thing. It's like, I mean, I think everybody was influenced by Monty Python, and like I loved like the Blackadder and Jeeves and Wooster and all.
So there are 2 types of people in this world: people who got Blackadder and everyone else, because that was very specific.
And Blackadder was phenomenal.
And I'm kind of weird. I know, Mike, like you grew up on the border, so you got a lot of Canadian TV.
Yes.
But I also, when I was a kid, because of my love of hockey, I convinced my parents to get one of those big 6-foot satellite dishes in the backyard. So I was watching Canadian TV since I was little too. And now I've had a Canadian Sling box. I've had Canadian TV forever. And there are some shows that are just phenomenal, like in Canada, like the Treehouse Network is a great network for kids. I mean, that's like, I grew up, my kids grew up on the Treehouse Network, which is really funny. Like so they know all these bizarre Canadian shows like Tupi and Binu and stuff like that they just loved. But also, I really fell in love. I mean, my wife's favorite drama. Speaking of dramas, it's like a drama comedy type thing. But my wife's favorite show is
Don't say Murdoch Mysteries.
No, it's called is it Being Erica or Finding Erica? Being Erica? Being Erica or Finding Erica? It's a CBC show. Really, it's an excellent show. It's a show about like a woman who can travel back in time to correct her past mistakes. It's really an awesome show. And it's
Scott Bakula did something like that one.
It's a complete Toronto show. It's like it's all about Toronto. And I first saw it when I was at the World Cup, and watching on CBC in the middle of the night. I found it, and then it's on Hulu now. So I think it's called Being Erica. And
it shouldn't have turned into this, but the real message of this is American TV, like networks, get your act together, because shows like The Crown and Sherlock, you've never produced shows that good.
And we get access to them now.
Was The Crown just Netflix or was it BBC? I can't remember.
I think it was like together they did it.
Yeah, it was together.
Yeah, because I'll tell you something right now. Like there are shows on Netflix that we would have never seen unless you had BBC America, and right. Like I've run into 4 or 5 of them that are just fantastic. Luther with
Luther, I watched a little of it. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I know, like all these shows, and they're all BBC shows.
There's 2 things that really drive me crazy in this country. How many Canadians have infiltrated American movies? It's just all over the place. They're everywhere. It's like a rash. And then also the Brits. The Brits are really the best. The Canadians can't hide their accent. The minute they say out, no matter who the actor or actress is, if they're Canadian or not. The Brits can have us 100% fooled, and that bothers me.
I'm not going to complain about certain Canadians because I'm not going to complain about Natasha Henstridge. I'll just watch any movie that she's in.
She's 75 years old now, Mike. Come on.
She is not 75 years old.
It's funny that we do this, but so the first thing, Dave Foley is a fan of Hockey Buzz.
Dave Foley, yeah. Sure.
I actually bumped into him at a Leaf game a few years ago.
He's a great guy. He's a big hockey fan, and he is
in line for the bathroom. But
he's an enormous fan of Hockey Buzz, and I've talked to him on several occasions.
Awesome.
He'll text me. He's really he was, of course, news radio was what people remember in Philly.
Yeah. He was great when they did the NHL awards, and then they went away from him, and I don't know why.
I know, I never got that, but on SCTV, he was phenomenal.
Kids in the Hall.
Kids in the Hall, right? Kids in the Hall. You're not going to take me to a Leafs game skit. It's still one of my funniest things ever.
Let's get started. We got a lot of
that up. And one other show before we get going, you got to watch. Okay, it's called The Durrells in Corfu. It's a PBS. It's a BBC show. Okay, and it's a story about a family that runs away from England, and it's a true story, and lands in and you would love this story. You would love this, Brett. Rush. You would love this because the Durrells, they're a real family that landed in Corfu, which is an island in Greece, and they they're integrating in there, and it's written. I didn't realize this you don't realize this right away because there's like 4 seasons now. It's still going right now. I think it's on Netflix. But it's written from the son's perspective. The son, Durrell, turned into one of the biggest naturalist zoologists in the world, and he started all these. He started what was called the Jersey Zoo in England, which is like one of the most famous zoos, and conservationists. And then the cool thing about this thing is he's just a kid, but collecting all these animals as the series goes along, and doing this research on animals when no one was doing research on animals. It's a fascinating. It's hilarious.
I was gonna say it sounds enthralling.
No, I'm serious. All the characters are awesome. It's incredibly well acted. I mean, if you're a fan of that stuff at all, I mean, this show is it's as funny as it gets. I mean, it's a really funny show. And it's the drama. It's just got it all. So definitely couldn't recommend it higher. All right, let's move on. Ready? All right.
Yep.
Can't believe I'm here. Hello, Hockey World. It's Wednesday, November 21st, 2018.
Neither can we. I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Peter Tassier.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I am Eklund, and you're watching the HockeyBuzzcast at HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings of the hockey world. And also now on Facebook at facebook.com/HockeyBuzz. And if you go on Facebook, I'm doing a real cool sneak peek thing of the trade rumor chart, which people are loving. And I'm thrilled about that. So I'm taking one of the names and putting it in there and talking a little bit about it each day. Cool. So, the trade rumor chart is a paid thing on HockeyBuzz. It's one of the few things that keeps us alive. So that we actually get money from. And so we appreciate all those who support it on HockeyBuzz as well. But if you want to see an extra little free name per day, today's our Artemi Panarin's up there. And of course, you can also watch the podcast because we're going to go through the rumor chart today as well in full tilt. But we do have some things to talk about because we, yesterday, it's worth talking about the fact that Ken Hitchcock is back, and this is something I think that was actually and actually prophesized by Peter a little while ago.
What?
Weren't you the one who said this?
I don't know. Did I?
I thought you were the one who said. Was it this? I thought maybe it was me. I don't know. I'm confused. I thought one of us talked about. I mean, I've talked about Hitchcock and Edmonton for years. Not but I didn't think Hitchcock was ever going to come back and coach again.
No, I wouldn't have
we never really talked about him.
Okay, well, I mean, I thought that I really like Hitchcock with this team. Actually, I think I'm totally different than the three of you guys just from looking around the texts that were going through yesterday. That I actually think this is an amazing move by him.
Well, let's just say first of all, it came out a little bit after that. This is sort of like he's going to be there for the rest of the year, and then we don't know what's going to be the case after that.
It doesn't really matter with Hitchcock anymore.
No, but yes and no. But what I'm saying is, I mean, he is under one edict here to make the playoffs.
Right.
And I didn't watch the entire game. I watched a little bit of it, and me and Russ and I were going back and forth on text during it. Early in the game, Edmonton, didn't look very enthused, but apparently as the game went along, Hitchcock was sort of, drilling into them what he wants them to do. And they came back and they won 4-3 in overtime against San Jose, which is not exactly an easy thing to do. But the thing, and Peter, this is the thing. I look at Hitchcock, and I heard somebody say about Hitchcock, Carlo Koliakovo, who played for him in St. Louis, is on Toronto radio now, and he said Hitchcock, in St. Louis especially, loved those heavy guys, Backus, Berglund, those type of players. He loves them, and he didn't like skill players like TJ Oshie, who wouldn't, back then wouldn't engage physically. If you look at Edmonton, who the hell other than Lucic and maybe Draisaitl are physical players that will engage? There's not much.
Alex Chason.
And maybe Darnell Nurse on the blue line. That's about it.
Yeah.
You know what?
This Hitchcock, I mean, this is one coach that I know very, very well. So this is a guy that I know really well. I talk to him all the time. I go back and I've had, been fortunate enough to have breakfast with him on several occasions. I mean, Hitchcock is really one of these guys, and he's interesting because I think the perception of him, Mike, is what you're saying there, that he does love he loves big players. He loves strength. He talked about in his post game last day how much he loves, how much heavier and bigger Edmonton was than he thought they would be, right? He talked about that. So, but, and he's tough on skilled players, yes, but it's not really that he hates skilled players. It's that Hitch thinks every player comes to him at a certain level, and every player has to go to another level. And
right.
And sometimes a lot of coaches come in and say, okay, well, McDavid is great. Like, he can't go to another level. That's like McDavid is but Hitch isn't that way. Hitch will take every player and find and ride them until they reach another level themselves. So that.
Okay, but you know what? Here's the one thing, Ek. If you watch that game, and I watched it for a little while, here was the game plan yesterday. We're just going to keep double shifting the McDavid line and stop playing the fourth line. The fourth line guys played 5 minutes.
Yeah, well, but you know what, Russ? That's all they have. I understand that.
Yeah, but that's not going to work over a course of a season.
No. I know that, but it had to work for a game. He doesn't need to worry about the end of January right now. He needs to worry about tomorrow,
right?
Then Friday, then Saturday, and that's all he has. Look, the statistics on the coach bump of things that go well for a team after a coach has changed is well documented. There's a bump, but teams tend to regress back to where they were with maybe a slight improvement. It doesn't solve things. The one thing that I think the Oilers, I think what I'm worried about for the Oilers, and I have a ton of time and respect for Ken Hitchcock because his pedigree and resume says enough. But Ken Hitchcock is a bit like Andy Murray was. He's very detailed. His system is incredibly complex in what he wants you to do because of the nuances involved. It's well documented.
Mm-hmm.
What the other thing is he works with you to do it, but there's a lifespan with it. Players get ground down by it, not because he's a grinding in your face kind of guy, but it's the constant pressure to do these little things. And when the things aren't done, it sets them off. And there's a reason why Andy Murray isn't in the NHL anymore. He was a decent coach, but he ground guys down.
Mm-hmm.
He ground them down.
Time has come for Edmonton to do that. I mean, this is what
it might be.
I mean, this is the issue. I mean, the issue is you're right. I mean, don't worry about January. If you turn it around, I mean, Hitch's way of thinking is turn it around now, like go balls to the wall for a couple months here, and turn it around now so that the confidence returns, so that the team realizes it's good again, and then the confidence will help.
It's only a two-line team.
Yeah, but it's a two-line team any way you slice it.
Right? No, that's not necessarily true. That's not necessarily true. They have young players. They're waiting. They're waiting to hold on. They're waiting to develop Kailer Yamamoto. Cooper Marody is there, but if he plays 5 minutes a game, he's not going to develop.
Look, that's an organizational thing, and Hitchcock's not going to fix that right now. Right. He just got there,
and that
come in.
Now you fix it. You play them.
Yeah, but the problem is, Russ, is that if they don't think the top six guys. If they don't think they're top six guys right now, then playing in Bakersfield and playing 20 minutes a night is probably better for them overall.
Because we know how Hitch is.
Well, right, but what Hitchcock is going to have to do in the next probably 3 to 4 weeks is find guys that he can trust on the fourth line within the organization, that they can play fourth line and play 6 or 7 minutes. But he's gonna kill McDavid in terms of playing. He'll play him 25 minutes a night. I don't know if that's good.
He knows what he's got in lines 1 and 2. He knows, like, that's obvious. So you've got to work that, and then you've got to slowly discover what your third and fourth lines are. You got to see what's in the organization, understand those guys. Yes, Russ, they need more minutes because I don't think there's an argument against what you're saying, but there is a point that it's going to take some time to get to that, because if you think guys like Paul Maurice and Mike Babcock have trust issues, top Mount Rushmore of top trust issues with players, Ken Hitchcock's on there.
And here's the thing, like AP does this article on Ken Hitchcock and says, well, in 2011, 2012, when he took over St. Louis, they were in first place after a month. This is the St. Louis Blues back then who were loaded with talent.
Right.
This team is not loaded with talent. And this bled a point. They bled a point in that game. They gave up more power plays than they had. Like, this is still, I don't think it's going to be fixed.
And I'll tell you something.
I don't think it is either, Russ, because the roster is going to trump what Ken Hitchcock can do.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you something. I'll tell you something else. And I was a little bit surprised that they started Koskinen again.
Me too.
I'm getting to the point now where I'm starting to doubt whether Cam Talbot will regain the number one job, because they've been going heavy with Koskinen, and they lost 6 of 7 up until yesterday's game. Koskinen is not a proven commodity, and if he plays well, then they have a chance. If they're not going back to Talbot, and Talbot's a UFA at the end of this year, there's a team that's completely bereft of a number one goaltender, and that in the end,
Talbot could go to Philadelphia and probably have a way better time of life. Not to change the subject, right? But I mean, this is that's one thing Hitchcock's got to fix too, is the fact that Edmonton is now also a goalie graveyard.
Right, and remember the problems that Hitch had in St. Louis with Halak, with Miller, with Jake Allen.
But here's, I mean, he has issue. With goalies, he tends to like favor backup goalies. I've noticed that in his career. Like he tends to, I've joked about it with him. Like he tends to, like, I wasn't surprised like Koskinen played. Like he does not like when starting goalies are comfortable. Put it that way. Like he will make the starting goalie think that he's got to earn his spot again. Like he's gonna make Talbot think. And the one thing that Hitch does, for better or worse, is he does come in and says, "Okay, guys, clean slate right now. Everything's new." And he won't make. And so there's a lot of baggage. McClellan before him, McClellan. Sorry, before him. He's the kind of coach that builds up a ton of baggage on players. He does. There's a ton. I mean, yes, the San Jose guys about
but that's the thing that's weird here, Ack, and I heard a couple commentators say this, is that McDavid went to bat for McClellan 3 or 4 days ago that he's not the problem.
Well, no. That all that tells me is, I mean, you can't go off of McDavid though. I mean, McDavid,
you can't go by that. I think that's the coach. He connected with the guy. Like McClellan's a smart guy. Like I get why McDavid did that.
Yeah, if you're McDavid, I mean, he's not. It's not. McClellan's not doing anything bad to McDavid. I mean, he's giving him all the ice time he wants to, and he's putting him out there in every possible situation. I mean, you can't. Players always like their coaches, and players go to bat for coaches all the time. The bottom line is, it's wins and losses, right? It just doesn't matter.
Yeah. Okay. So wins and losses. The last 2 years that Ken Hitchcock coached, he didn't make the playoffs.
Right.
But know that Hitchcock's whole thing is.
Well, this is the same guy. You're giving me the same thing AP did. You're giving me the old Ken Hitchcock argument.
I'm not giving you the old Ken Hitchcock.
Yes, everybody is. Everybody is.
I didn't read any of those articles, to be fair. And and if they're saying the same thing that I'm saying, then they're brilliant. But I'm just saying that what I'm saying here is that Hitch is not about. I think the problem with Hitchcock is and why he's gone on these short-term deals and stuff like that. Why he was going year to year in St. Louis is I don't think he likes coaching a team long-term. I think what he likes is exactly what he been put into in Edmonton. He likes a situation that looks helpless, that looks bizarre, and he can go in there and find a way to get that team to first play defensively responsible, and then do the and he will play McDavid 30 minutes a game. He won't care. He's not a long-term thing like we talk about, but short-term in Edmonton, it was just time to do something like this.
And his resume is I mean, obviously it's impressive, but this just smacks to me of what Washington did a few years ago with Dale Hunter. Come in, be a nut cutter, you're only going to be there for a short time, so why not just go in and do what needs to be done with some of these players? I think that's what's going on.
I know what you're saying on the macro point of it, but Hunter, okay, I talked to Hunter about this, his time in Washington, and he hated it because he's like, I didn't have any way I couldn't motivate the players. He's like, that was Hunter's big thing. He's like, when you're in the juniors or at the AHL, you can always tell guys, you're never going to get to the NHL. And Hunter's like, when you're in the NHL, how do you get these guys going? Hitchcock doesn't have any issues with that kind of stuff. Hitchcock knows how to motivate players left and right, and he's going to do things. He's the biggest problem that Hitchcock has on this team, and with any Hitchcock-based team, has always been the same. He needs the guy. He needs the one guy who's going to sell his system to everybody else.
Okay, let me give you the downside of this, though.
Go ahead.
Let's say they don't make the playoffs. Ken Hitchcock will walk away. The Edmonton Oilers then are back to square one.
Yeah, right. No, the Edmonton Oilers, if they don't make
you're right. Wasting Connor McDavid's years.
Well, to me, they've
been doing that anyway, though. I mean,
to me, this is a long bomb pass by Peter Chiarelli to save his job, because I think if they miss the playoffs, I think he's done. Now, let's just transition quickly to St. Louis and Yo, because that happened a couple days ago.
I'm still on this thing. Before we go there, I mean, I don't. We can definitely. Sorry. But I think that, this is. How long have we been sitting here saying Edmonton's just doing the same friggin' thing, that they're not willing to take a chance? They're not going to do something crazy. They're not going
to. Crazy all the time.
The problem is, it was not McClellan. It was not the coaching. First of all, it was the general manager, and second of all, it was the team. The team is structured. It is
changing general manager does nothing for them right now. You're talking about a team that has had enough of this of being in the sweepstakes for the top pick overall. This is a team that can't do that anymore. This is a team that they cannot. Their fan base will not support it.
Right.
This is a team that usually has way too many cooks in the kitchen around them in general to get it done.
But they have the best player in the league, surrounded by a very good player in Draisaitl, and a lot of average talent, or guys who are being paid well above their what their talents, and their defense is average at best, and their goaltending is probably below average. So that's what I'm talking about. Other than McDavid, this is an organization that's just been left to rot. And I think this is
they have some players. You don't know
few, but not all.
McClellan does put guys in boxes and ruins them. Like he puts them in his spot. Some of these guys will really benefit from a fresh start. Some of these guys will definitely, and some of these guys are more talented. They were drafted higher than we all. These are some talented players there that have been buried by McClellan over the years, and. Right. And that's going to go away right away. That goes away instantly, which is what's really important.
What's going to happen here is Chiarelli is going to get a look at if this roster can be fixed by a coach. That's the first thing he's going to learn,
right?
Because he's got to cover his own mistakes,
right?
Todd McClellan did not turn Taylor Hall into Adam Larson,
right?
Todd McClellan did not turn Jordan Eberle into Ryan Spooner. Todd McClellan did not sign Milan Lucic to an exorbitant amount of money, and basically when no one else was going to.
And I agree with you. And I will say this much too: I do not believe that this was Chiarelli's idea to bring in Hitchcock.
Well, I think
it was.
I think it was, because I think Chiarelli is now at the point where he is utterly lost.
Yes,
he made a weird trade. He's made strange moves out of desperation to fix something he doesn't understand.
Right, and I think that people above him are seeing that, and they know that if changing the general manager does nothing for you right now,
right? But
I don't know about
Hitchcock. Coaches, general managers hate Hitchcock. I've been around. I've seen it in situations. Hitchcock will tell them exactly what's wrong. He'll say, "Why the hell did you make that trade?" Chiarelli hates. If one thing, Chiarelli is a survivor, a lot like Dean Lombardi was, where like they do what they have to do to survive. They are survivors for sure, but they do not like to put themselves in uncomfortable situations.
Chiarelli has a Mount Rushmore list of bad managerial decisions going back to his days in Boston.
Right.
It's unbelievable. And the fact that the Bruins won a cup with him is even more remarkable.
Well, he did make some good moves.
His carnage he's left behind.
Even the good moves that helped them win a cup, like trading Blake Wheeler to Atlanta for Rich Peverly and a couple other pieces, ended up in the end being bad moves. So I mean, the thing is, I don't think Bob Nicholson is going to allow Peter Chiarelli to make the deals that are necessary for that team to improve down the line. I think this was the last gasp of Peter Chiarelli to bring in somebody who can get them to the playoffs and save his job. And if they don't make the playoffs, I think Hitchcock will re-retire, and Chiarelli will be out on his butt, and they'll be looking for a new general manager.
Yeah, Peter.
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, I agree with you, Mike, and I also think that Daryl Katz, whatever it is, needs to take a long, hard look at who he has in his organization making decisions. Because you know what? I just went and pulled up the Oilers list of people. There's way too many hockey men in there. You've got conflicting ideas.
It's a crazy scenario. It's
way too much groupthink of ex-Oilers, Bob Nicholson, it's bonkers. You need people in there who can completely disrupt your way of thinking because you've done the same thing over and over again.
Right.
I want to get to the rumors, but let me just say something about what happened in St. Louis because
wait, Mike. Sorry, I just got to finish this thought. We'll get there.
Okay.
I promise you we'll get there. But this is a really important topic because I think that, I mean, and I'm not just defending Hitchcock here because I've ripped Hitchcock like left and right. But I will continue to, and he what's great about him is he's the kind of guy who likes that. He actually is the kind of guy that of all the coaches out there, if you say something, he'll tell me he agrees with me sometimes. It's the funny. He's never once criticized anybody that I've ever seen for criticizing him. That's which is rare. But who do you think is a better relationship, Hitchcock and Chiarelli or Hitchcock and Nicholson?
Hitchcock and Nicholson.
They
go way back.
They were all involved with Hockey Canada, and so I mean, but Chiarelli was too. Chiarelli
was too, but Nicholson was the boss. Okay, Nicholson was the boss who brought Hitchcock in time and time again. So I can't think for a second that Chiarelli, with the kind of personality he has, is happy about this, because he knows that.
Well, he should be happy about it. Actually,
you're a GM, and the coach is not talking to you, but talking to the guy above you. Because that's what's going to happen. Hitch is going to not talk to Chiarelli. Hitch is going to talk to Nicholson about stuff.
He should be happy about it because if they win, it probably saves Chiarelli his job.
Yep. I don't think so. I actually think Chiarelli's in trouble either way. But I think.
Well, I think he should be. I mean,
and I think he is. But I think the whole point of this season, they're looking at it right now. They are really in survival mode. They're going to get through this year, and Chiarelli has made all the trades he can basically make, and there's not going to be a big major move that's going to come down. So they're just bringing in a coach, and they're going to ride this out. And then at the end of the year, Nicholson will go to Hitchcock and say, "Do you think I should keep Chiarelli?" That's how I think it plays out because I think that's the kind of relationships you're talking about there.
I don't know if Hitchcock is going to be there after this year. I think
he might not be, but he'll have a say in whether Chiarelli is.
Right.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because it's like he might not be because he might get out everything he wants to get out of it because this is what he lives for. These kind of challenges. The worse the team, the crazier the situation, the better Ken Hitchcock is into it. So that's going to happen here.
Okay. The other situation was Yo, and he gets fired, and Berube comes in as the interim, and they bring in Larry Robinson to be sort of like a helpful assist. I think he was an advisor to the Blues anyway, but he comes in, and the interesting thing is he's only coming in for basically December. It's not a permanent, like he's going to be an interim assistant head coach for the rest of the year. It's only for a few weeks, which leads me to believe that Berube is a placeholder here. And supposedly, according to a number of reports, they are interested in Quenneville. So I would not be surprised if Quenneville eventually ends up in St. Louis.
Yes. I mean, that is what everybody's assuming right now. The thing that when we had Kevin on here last week, he said something that was really interesting, and I looked into it more as well. And, with Quenneville being under contract to Chicago does have a little bit of say where he goes. Normally this doesn't matter with teams, and they'll just let a coach go if they fired him or whatever, and they'll say if you get another opportunity. But this is Joel Quenneville. All right, so Chicago's holding a very big chess piece that might be better just not having in the league than giving them to the St. Louis Blues, who are in their division. And I think that if I really think that that something's going on behind the scenes to get this to work out. I know you can't officially make trades.
Yeah, I just don't. You don't have a first right of refusal to prevent somebody from taking a job. If if they resigned, that's one thing.
You do have
fired them.
Contract. It depends on the contract of the coach. Right. Contracts are different for all coaches.
If there's a non-compete,
Chiarelli did this. That's funny. Chiarelli did this with one of his coaches at one point, because Chiarelli had a weird contract with one of his coaches, I remember. But I don't know what Quenneville's contract is exactly. I've been trying to get to the bottom of that. But but I do know that as long as Chicago is paying him, they do have some say over what he does. And they can say, we don't give you permission to go there, or we're not going to give you permission to interview there, or what have you, or we're going to, you're going to break our contract. And Quenneville might be looking at Chicago, at St. Louis, like, yeah, sure, I played there. I like it there. It's good. It's a great city, great place to raise a family and all that stuff. But, he might be that something's better coming along. I do think Craig Berube being interim is all that they would do with him, because they wanted to keep the options open for Quenneville, and maybe now possibly McClellan. But I think that, that's possible too. You got to remember that McClellan being available changes things too. I'm not a fan of him, but a lot of people are. I'm not so sure. I think that this is going to get more interesting as it goes along here, but I do think that if Quenneville was the option, it would have happened immediately. And I think that there's got to be something else there.
Well, there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake here. Remember, he's owed $6 million next year and prorated $6 million for the rest of this year. So,
but that doesn't matter to Chicago. They've got that money.
No. I'm talking about St. Louis. I mean, for him to take the St. Louis job, they're going to have to offer him something comparable to, basically, if they pay him $4, Chicago's on the hook for the rest of the money. All you would think Chicago would want him to take another job. It just alleviates them having to pay the rest of the salary.
Yeah, the money. Remember, Chicago. This is the biggest stadium in the NHL. They sell tickets like crazy. They have tons of. They have money coming out of their ears in Chicago. They could pay twice as much on the salary cap. They keeping Quenneville away from St. Louis is worth something to them. And so they're gonna. You might be right that it's a contract thing where St. Louis says we can only play him $4, and Chicago's like, well, we're not letting him go, and we're not going to do that unless you pay his entire thing. That could be the case. They might just be wanting to screw St. Louis financially, but I think more than anything else, they want to keep Quenneville out of the conference. I think they are looking at like Philadelphia and other teams out there that could struggle, and they say, okay, Philadelphia comes around or whoever comes around and says they want Quenneville. We'd rather have Quenneville go to Philly than go to St. Louis.
Well, just capping the coaching thing, because Russ and I were talking about this, and we'll wait for him to come back. But the two coaches who I've heard who is next, and obviously Hackstall, we've talked about that a lot. Randy Carlisle in Anaheim has been getting a little bit of attention. The thing I heard yesterday from Darren Dreger, and I don't know if I agree with this, he said, with all the stuff that's going on in Pittsburgh, that Sullivan might be in trouble. And the guy just won 2 Stanley Cups. I mean, my goodness.
It has no Crosby right now.
And it has no Crosby, and Matt Murray's been in and out of the lineup, and Letang is not Letang anymore. And I mean, if they fire Mike Sullivan this year because they're having a bad first 25 games, I mean, I know Jim Rutherford likes to shake things up, but my God, I mean, give the guy a little bit of a break.
The thing to think about with this is, Staggerwell, who's a big guy there, right, who's been around forever in Pittsburgh, was on next to them the other day talking about it, and he said that he thinks that there's a definite boredom factor going on with the Pittsburgh Penguins. That he feels like the team is not motivated to win. That they've been down this road before. They know they can eventually turn it on, and then it does just have to be good. If they have to make the playoffs, that's all they have to do. And why are they busting their butts? And that's what a coach is for, right? I mean, that's what a coach is, to get teams through that kind of thing, because they're right. The players in there, they're absolutely right. The Penguins can turn it on the last month of the season and win a Stanley Cup. They've done it before, but that's why you have a coach in there. And if the coach is not getting them through that, I mean, remember Sullivan was fired from places before. I mean, he's a good coach, but we don't know what his shelf life type thing is. That's the other. I mean, there's a whole bunch of situations. Maybe, Rutherford won't let things go too stale too quickly, and I mean, I don't know if Quenneville is available. Maybe that's a place that Quenneville goes. I mean, that would be like something. That would be a coup. Like if you're sitting there and you're Rutherford and you know that you can get Quenneville to coach your team, at least it's a fresh perspective, it's a new perspective, and your coach there may be running, he may have said every speech he can say to those guys. That's I wouldn't be shocked. I mean, I don't think Drager's right on. I don't think it's imminent or anything.
Well, I don't think he's right. I mean, but I know that it's been out there, and I'm sure you've heard of that. Is that the Pearson for Hagelin deal is not just a move. One move. They want to. They're still looking for moves.
Yeah.
I'm sure that's reflected on the rumor chart.
I'm convinced they're trying to move Phil Kessel. And I've been in the past, whenever Phil Kessel's names come up, I've always been saying they were wrong. But this time, I think they're right.
I keep saying Arizona when it comes to Kessel. It makes too much sense, but I don't know.
Well, yeah, Kessel's definitely, Arizona's definitely in there as far as the as far as the rumors go. With me on the rumor chart, I can bring up the rumor chart a little bit.
Yeah. So, but before we do that, Russ, I just because I was bringing up what we were talking about in terms of Carlisle maybe being in trouble, Hackstall being in trouble. of the ones that are still hired, I still think Hackstall is the most in trouble because
and this is the reason why I think that. I think if we looked at things sensibly, and again, I hate to say this, right, because I'm really very friendly with Ian LePerrier, but his time has come to an end with the Flyers. The PK is awful, right?
Yeah.
But he hasn't been fired. And so the fact that he hasn't been fired and it's so obvious that he should be leads me to believe that when Hackstall goes, so will a bunch of his coaches, or at least Ian LePerrier. And, I don't think they all will go because I think Chris Knobloch will stay because I think he's done a pretty good job. It's not all on him with the power play. I think part of that is the Hackstall influence too, as far as who's out there for the power play. So I think that'll change. So honestly, I think, if you're talking, look what it took for St. Louis. It took a couple of shutouts in a row, and then it's like, all right, you know what, we're done. The Flyers aren't going to get shut out. They're just not. They have too much scoring for that. But I think they don't even have to be bad losses. I just think they lose a couple in a row that don't look good, and I think this move will be made overnight. I think all the planning is in place now.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think I predict that this weekend will be the big weekend for this because Flyers schedule, they play Buffalo tonight. They play I forget who they play. Maybe it's New York on the Rangers.
New York.
Yeah, they play in Toronto on Saturday.
Those are three tough games. There are three teams the Flyers have never been wonderful against. And even when Toronto was terrible, they had the Flyers number. So
Georgiev is playing tonight, so the Rangers have set it up for Lundqvist to play against the Flyers.
Right. So, I mean, I want to get to a quick Nylander update before I've got to go too, because that is
okay. We'll talk about some injuries and maybe pick one or two out of the rumor chart after you're gone.
Yeah, that's fine. I will have to boogie out of here in a second. All right, so
boogie out
right here. I know that's my wife's expression. She uses that. All right. Okay. So, I'm told the Nylander thing is down to a game of chicken between the Kings and the Leafs. Okay, and I went back and forth with somebody this morning on a long time for this, and that the Kings are being told, this is through my sources in LA, the Kings are being told that the Leafs have a deal that they can ink Nylander to, that both Nylander and they are comfortable with, but not as comfortable as as Toronto wants to be. Toronto still wants to consider moving him. The deal I'm told is more along the lines of like a shorter deal than we'd expect by a lot, a much shorter deal. So kind of a bridge deal to a degree. But they said, look at what, happened in Boston last year, with Pasternak, like a slightly shorter deal, more money. How this plays out, will be interesting. But there's a name that the Leafs want, and if the Leafs can get the Kings to put him in there, and that would be Cale Clegg. If they can get him, the deal is done instantly, and that's what I was told. The Leafs are waiting on that now. So the Kings are saying no, we're not willing to trade him. The Kings thinking that they don't have a deal to sign Nylander long term. Leafs saying, we got a deal, we'll just sign him. Otherwise, if you don't give it to him, it feels like it's an interesting game of chicken right now between these two teams.
I mean, yeah, you have to have a deal in place. You can't give up a player like Cale Clegg without a deal in place. But boy, that's a really hard price.
Yeah,
and I think it could go 1-for-1 that way because
not a chance. I'm
telling you, do not say not a chance. Because
I'm not saying this is not casting aspersions on Cale Clegg. I'm just telling you.
Not. I think what you have in your mind as far as what the value is has probably changed a little with what reality is. And I still think if Kyle Dubas walks away with Cale Clegg and nothing else, he'll be fine.
That's a hell of a deal, and you know it because of how the Kings are just not willing to do it. And this has been going on for a while. The Kings are sitting there, and they're sitting. The Kings are saying, "No, we need more." The Kings want more than Nylander for him. So
that's funny.
No, but it's not. I mean, because Nylander has done what in the NHL? You know, and also Nylander has proven to be a little bit of a problem. You know, like and don't limit that either. Like they have to sign him still, and I think
the problem isn't William. The problem is Michael.
But it doesn't matter.
Right. They're attached at the hip. But
right, I mean, that's an issue too, and that also affects value because teams don't want that kind of headache.
Right, and then this is the thing about Los Angeles. I mean, Los Angeles is in cap jail as it is, and now you're talking about. I mean, first of all, I think they would have to be able to clear out salary to sign Nylander, and in this, if it's a 1-for-1, they're not clearing out anything other than an entry level deal in Clegg. So I would think a guy like a Toffoli or somebody like that is included in a deal.
No way. They're not giving up Toffoli.
I'm saying somebody like that, Russ.
Maybe some money in some way, shape, or form would be going them that way. I mean, there's other players that they could.
I can only tell you from the Toronto perspective that if they made a 1-for-1 like that, and don't get me wrong, like I said, I think he's a fine prospect. He's unproven. We don't know what he's going to do at the NHL level. I'm sure managers and scouts have a better idea. The Leafs and Dubas will get eviscerated in Toronto if they make that deal.
Only early on, Mike. He is a potential top pairing defense.
Go ahead, Peter.
I was just going to say, if that's what the deal is, I agree with Mike. The initial shock will be rough, but that if that's what they pull off, and there's another move in the pipes to address something else in a different manner, then all will be forgotten.
Right. And if he turns out to be a top 4 defenseman, then Dubas
turns out to be a top pairing or top 4 guy in 2 years. But the problem of solving the right side is still addressed in another manner this season. Right. It won't matter. You can do long-term and short-term in this, but it's going to take more than just one deal.
Yeah. And
cap-wise, they've got 5.2 in space, so you'll end up getting like Kyle Clifford or Nate Thompson in the deal.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think Nate Thompson is the name that I actually heard more of.
Yeah,
he's an unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. He's just, he's just an expiring contract.
Yep.
I mean, you cannot, with all the stuff that's happening in the future for Toronto, with all the contracts they have to sign, you can't dismiss the fact that getting an entry-level contract of a talented player is an enormous plus.
Yeah, and you'll throw him right in the Marlies. He can play with Sandin, and then let those two develop for most of this season. And then if they need one of them, hey, you bring one of them up. But if not, you still got an asset for the next 10 years for a guy that didn't want to play for you.
Russ, I just don't think that if they make a trade for Nylander, it's going to have to be. There's going to have to be a long-term aspect, but there's also going to have to be a short-term aspect. And they're not in this deal unless Kyle Clifford and Nate Thompson does not provide a short-term upgrade. You're talking about
but here's the other thing. For all we know, William Nylander is going to sign like a 2-year bridge deal to make this deal done. And then the Kings only have him for 2 years, and then they have to negotiate with him again.
Right. But you may only need 2 years to get to the point where they can negotiate with him again. So you're going to get your money.
The longer this goes, and somebody said this pretty perfectly, I've got to get going, guys, but the longer it goes, the less chance that the Leafs are getting something to help them now. And that's the reality of the situation. Because
I posed the question: where do the Leafs get the best return if they can't reach a deal? Which I still think I'm opting. There's more chance of a trade than a signing. I think the best chance for a return is December 1. It's not the trade deadline. It's not the draft. It's now. Because teams,
you have to do it now. They're not. These either going to be traded or signed by December 1st. I fully believe that 100%.
Right, and I think if he does sign with Toronto, it's going to be a 2 or 3 year bridge deal, probably around $5 million, something like that. That makes sense. The cap hit won't kill them, but I think the Nylander camp that's a complete capitulation on their part if they sign that type of deal, and I don't know if they're gonna surrender like that because Toronto wins if they sign a 3-year bridge for $5 million.
Surrendering. It's basically getting paid almost like you wanted, but not quite, and then getting free agency sooner. That's what it is.
Yeah, I mean, the Nylander group is nothing if not cocky. Okay, so if you're Dubas, you're sitting there, you're saying you think your guy's that good. He's got a 2-year deal now to prove it, and then he can sign a $10 million deal somewhere. And that's what Dubas is saying to them.
Well,
and
no,
saying, of course that's exaggeration, but that's when you're talking to the Nylander group, who has that way of thinking. That's the way you negotiate that deal.
He's got 5 years until he becomes a UFA. So the only thing he reaches with a 2 or 3 year deal is arbitration. That's all he qualifies for.
Right.
So there's no resolution going forward if he signs a bridge deal. He's still property of the Leafs, and the Leafs are probably still going to hold his feet to the fire in terms of him being below Tavares, Marner, and Matthews in terms of salary.
So Joe Smith from The Athletic got a quote from Nikita Kucherov that said, when he was having his dispute, I just wanted to play. I didn't want to stay at home.
Right.
We don't see that quote out of Nylander, and we never will.
Yeah. That's true. I got to run, guys. Thank you.
Okay. We'll
have a great Thanksgiving, everyone.
See ya.
Yeah.
Have a Thanksgiving.
And it's not to say I don't think he wants to play. I'm just saying I think Kucherov was willing to come back because of his burning sensation to play more than to make that money that he was desiring, because he knew he would. Where in the other, I think Nylander it's more about the money, but he does want to play, but it's more about the money.
The thing with Nylander is he comes from a family that has some money. His dad made money. There's no support, no lack of support mechanism here for him, right? Like, so they can be patient and wait. He's got European options too, which apparently they'll be content with. And if his dad's involved in his life, he'll be doing as much training and work.
Yeah, he'll probably play for Modo or somebody like that.
Yeah, and that's fine. And it would appear, from what we know and have understood, that they're more than comfortable to take that risk.
Yeah.
And they've done their analysis, their belief, understanding, and they're there to go. I mean, here's the thing. Taking a bridge deal from the Kings at maybe a little more than what a bridge should be worth is probably better for Nylander, because at that point, he's not going to get squeezed out by two other guys, namely Marner and Matthews.
Right. Taking a bridge deal with the Leafs just delays the inevitable. And makes it impossible. So
I do have a thing too here, Peter. Sorry.
No, go.
But this is like a cool your Jets moment for Leafs fans, because here's the thing. I know Leafs fans are, and even in the chat room, they're like, hey, why don't we try and get Jeff Carter or someone like that? And you were mentioning Toffoli. Here's why. Cal Peterson is up, and Cal Peterson is their next franchise goalie. If he goes on a little run here, they stay viable. They're not going to break up their core if Cal Peterson's shutting teams up.
Yeah, but their core is Doughty. Their core is Kopitar. Their core is not Tyler Toffoli.
No, he's still in the core, and so is Jeff Carter. I disagree with that.
Maybe Carter is. Like if they could get rid of Ilya Kovalchuk right now, based on the direction they're going, maybe they would. Now, Peter, you have to drop off, and then you may come back.
No, I'll just be holding my phone doing something here. So.
Oh, okay, good. All right.
Just keep it up.
Just touching on the rumor chart here, and we have to factor in a bunch of teams right now, and we know it's early. It's only first quarter of the season, but there have been some serious injuries, and I don't know whether those injuries will facilitate trades. I mean, you could see Tampa Bay look for a stopgap in goal with Vasilevsky out between 4 to 6 weeks with the foot injury. Boston, Russ, is going to be really interesting because not only, Chara is up in the air right now in terms of his injury. We haven't heard anything definitively. And now we hear yesterday Bergeron out for at least 4 weeks with, I think it was either a clavicle, collarbone, or shoulder injury. So a team that, the race in the Atlantic is going to be tough. And losing Chara and Bergeron for almost a month, or maybe longer than a month, is going to hurt Boston. I don't know if that's going to kick Don Sweeney into making a deal or something like that.
I don't know if it'll kick him into making a deal, but we all suspected this could happen with the Bruins, and those are the two names that always come up with injuries. And Krejci would be the next one. Yeah. So this is not unexpected. To me, it's actually expected. Like, I would be more shocked if Patrice Bergeron played a full season and say, and almost the same with Chara at this point at his age, right? So they've planned for it. So far, they're getting by. They just need to make the playoffs and have those guys on the roster in the playoffs, and then they'll feel like they have a chance, and I agree with them. Yeah. Getting there is going to be the battle.
Yeah, and like it was said when Matthews went down with Toronto, if you stay 500, you'll be during this, you'll be okay to get to the playoffs. Now, there was a catastrophic injury to Trocheck, Peter, on Monday. And now Dale Talon and then the Panthers came out and said he'll be back this season, but this is like the Dave Bolland injury with the Leafs a few years ago, where he had the skate cut that cut his I think it was his Achilles or a muscle in his ankle, and when he came back, he wasn't Dave Bolland anymore. He was a shadow of his former self. Trocheck may come back, but I seriously doubt he's going to be the Trocheck that was playing before this injury, at least for a little while. So this is a blow for Florida, because they were operating pretty well with Luongo coming back.
Yep. When Luongo's healthy, this team can play, and there's no, I mean, first Trocheck nearly gets decapitated by Brendan Lemieux, and then this happens. I mean, this is just a run of bad luck for the guy. I feel bad for him. Not out indefinitely, be back in the season, but again, what happens now? Trocheck's upside's probably better than Bolland's, but I mean, I think people forget that Bolland was a very effective player in certain roles when he was in his prime. You just asked the Sedins what he was like to play against in 2009, 10, and 11. Like, it was ugly for them. He absolutely just beat those guys down, and that's a different game than Trocheck. But once it was gone, he wasn't there anymore, right? Like, he just didn't have the effectiveness,
right?
For Florida. Yeah, man, it's just an unlucky break, and yikes. Like, every time they think they're getting a handle on their season, something else just happens. Yeah.
Now, going to the rumor chart here, we'll just mention what Eck has for Nylander. He has the Kings leading, Calgary, Toronto at 20%, Carolina, Vegas, and Philadelphia. Again, I'll just say, I think if they would have to get, in my mind, I think that for either just for cosmetic reasons, they would have to get more than Clegg. But I think Clegg is a good young defenseman.
Well, you'll get like Nate Thompson or something else to balance.
That really doesn't move the ball. They would have to get something that would help.
Again, I'll go back to this argument, and then we can move on. This has been 2 years that the Leafs have been trying to acquire a defenseman and can't do it. This may be the only way that you could acquire a top pairing defenseman. You just have to, wait a little longer for him to develop. That's it.
Right. Now, Columbus was in Toronto on Monday. Leafs made a comeback victory 4-2 against them. I was in the scrum with John Tortorella before the game. And Russ, I just got the impression, listening to him and listening to and seeing where the Blue Jackets are, and things may change between now and February 25th. It doesn't sound to me like they're trading Panarin or they're trading Bobrovsky.
No, I told you, I think it's all in. I do get that feeling too. I feel like it's all in, and they're going to just, that's why Torts got the 2-year extension, so he could push everything forward this year, try his best to win a cup. They're very hot in their last 10 games. They're first place right now in the Metro. They're not going to trade him. I thought initially they would, but now I look at things and, again, they're still not scoring that many goals. They're still like in the middle of the conference in goals. Like Ottawa has more goals,
and it's all that one line, Russ. It's all, was it Dubois, Atkinson, and I think Panarin. I think it's the number one line. I was very impressed with Dubois. Atkinson was first star of the week last week and had a goal in Toronto. And Panarin is Panarin. He's great. So, but they need offense from the Boone Jenners and from Wenberg and from Foligno. They need that secondary offense to be able to, I think, get past the Washingtons or the other teams in the Metro.
They do. I mean, I'm looking at them, and you're right. Atkinson, Panarin, Dubois are the 3 leaders, and then Werenski's the next guy, and then Anthony Duclair. Like, imagine if they didn't pick up Anthony Duclair.
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's, I mean, my goodness, it's a great ad. It would be the equivalent would be Tyler Innes being the 4th leading forward in Toronto in scoring.
Yeah, and Milano's got 1 goal in 8 games, and I've got a newsflash for Torts. If you want to get goals out of him, you have to play him. You can't just, take him out because he does something you don't like. He's not going to fully develop that way. He will score goals for you, but not that way. Look at Wenberg. I mean, 12 points in 21 games. He's regressed.
Yeah, well, I don't think he's getting as much ice time.
That's a good question. He may not be.
I mean, it seems like they've upped Dubois, and he's now basically the #1 center. And I'm not looking at the stats, but I think
Dubois the #1 center over Wenberg, which is fine. I think organizationally that was the plan. Anyhow, Wenberg was like the placeholder for that. But I don't think Wenberg's even a good #2 at this point.
Yeah, 12. You'd expect more than 12 points out of a #2 center. Another one on the top of X's list is Jeff Skinner. And it was interesting. I was talking with somebody last week about Skinner, and everybody said the Sabres paid basically a rental price for Skinner when they got him from Carolina. But that the expectation was that Skinner would be in Buffalo for 1 year, and they would flip him at the deadline and get a return probably better than what they gave up to Carolina, but they'd have the benefit of Skinner playing with Eichel and playing well. Well, there's a problem here. Skinner is scoring like crazy. I think he has 14 goals now. The Sabres have won 6 in a row. They're in the playoff race right now in the Atlantic. Now that may not last because but I think that they're a much better team than people thought, and I thought they were going to be improved. But Peter, you first. Skinner poses a problem to the Sabres because the Sabres weren't expecting to have to sign him, and now the way he's played with Eichel, you may have to think about re-signing him because he's been so good.
Hell yeah, you do. Like, in what logic does Jeff Skinner not fit into the Sabres plan?
Right.
Like how? Like, you've got a guy who gels with Eichel. Isn't that exactly what the Sabres have wanted forever? It wasn't Evander Kane.
Right.
It wasn't anyone. Like, this is it.
Yeah.
This is your Wheeler and Scheifele, and they're both how old?
Skinner's 26.
26, and Eichel's 21 now.
21, and they have the grizzled veteran in Jason Pominville having a resurgence on the line. He's in his 30s, but he's a UFA.
Yeah, okay. Let's see, Skinner or Pominville. Like,
well, the difference here is I think Pominville would be willing to take, because I think he's over 35. He'd be willing to take probably a 1 or 2 year deal for lesser money to stay around because he's a former Sabre captain.
If Pominville would take a 1 year deal that you can roll over kind of each year, like a Joe Thornton's doing,
right?
And particularly if Buffalo makes the playoffs. I mean, have you looked at the standings? The Sabres they're a good team. Look. Carter Hutton's playing out of his mind right now.
Yes.
And that's helping. But you know what? The Jets on whatever it was, Friday night, and I was at the game, threw everything in the kitchen sink at the Sabres.
Mm-hmm.
And stood their ground. And there were times when I thought I didn't know what Phil Housley had them doing. But I think that was more because the Jets are just a much more well-seasoned team. Yeah. When they're on, they'll make anyone look like chaos. But the Sabres hung tough. They did all the right things as Carter Hutton kept them in the game.
Right.
And boom, next thing you know, they tied up on the power play, and then 3-on-3 they win it in a shootout. I mean, if they can grind out 2-1 wins like that on the odd occasion, watch out.
And Russ, they're slowly giving Rasmus Dahlin more responsibility. They moved him up from the #2 to the #1 power play. They're slowly increasing his minutes. He's sort of supplanting Ristolainen as the go-to offensively on the blue line, which we expected. But I mean, there's such room for, and Middlestat really hasn't kicked it into gear yet. So it's like he's doing okay, but he's not doing what we thought he might. But it might be a situation where a 19-year-old just takes him a little while longer to get into it.
I thought it would for him. I was talking to Steve Greeley yesterday because he's going to be on Hockey Prospect Radio with SiriusXM, and it's interesting because I asked him about Dahlin, not on the show, but just sort of chit-chatting, and And yeah, he felt the same way I did, that he's just starting to feel comfortable. And now we're seeing the Dahlin that we would see at every other level with the moves he makes and everything else. And he talked about, actually Greeley mentioned to me about a play in the Winnipeg game that Dahlin just looked spectacular. And I felt like he looked great against Pittsburgh too. So he's obviously the organization's happy with him, but he's really starting to come on. And that's a big deal. I mean, it's made that, and Skinner has made all the difference, but keeping Skinner, it's going to be hard.
Yeah. And I don't know where this came from, but someone from local.
I mean, they'll have to pay him Nathan Peterman money.
Someone on local Buffalo radio was speculating about what Skinner would be looking for, and I thought this was ridiculous. On an 8-year max deal, which he's 26, so an 8-year deal would be to 34. I don't think anybody is signing him to an 8-year deal, but that the ask would be over. I think the guy said $9 million, and I'm like, you're high. Really, that's not happening. I think that's Mitch Marner territory is 9.5. I think Skinner on a long-term deal probably is going to be maybe in the 6.75 to 7.25 range, something like that.
Yeah, I think he'll get 7.75, something like that.
I think 7.75 is in there.
For like 6 years.
His agent, I don't know who it is, will probably use some examples, and they'll probably use something like Evander Kane. And
I think it's Newport.
The reason that he's not Evander Kane money is because you're not desperate like San Jose is. There's more pieces. The Sabres are apparently on the upswing. Like, I think they've got they're a work in progress, but when things are clicking, they're a very good team. It's just, there's some question marks in certain areas there.
Zach Bogosian still looks bad. I see him in
Bill Housley's still got some work to do with some things, but might be getting away on it just from some chemistry. He might be getting, finding success in spite of what he's doing right now. But if he can figure out, not ruin what's going on, right? Like, don't screw up the good things that are naturally happening. Watch out. But you got to remember, Skinner is a great player because right now he's got a freaking elite center in Jack Eichel. And who else is coming around is Middlestat.
Yeah. Well, you saw the 3-on-3 team that they put out there is great. But the other thing about the one thing that hasn't been screwed up that was talked about ad nauseum, which I had a feeling wasn't going to happen, is Rasmus Ristolainen is playing great. Why is he playing great? Because he doesn't have to play as many minutes anymore. That was the problem with Ristolainen, is they were piling on minutes the last couple of years because there weren't any other options. Once Dahlin got in there, that changed it for him, and that's made all the difference too. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, and for Sabre fans out there, I think if they want to sign Skinner and re-sign Pominville, at least on a short-term basis, then you're probably going to have to either find somebody to take Bogosian's contract, so get rid of Bogosian, or buy
He only has 1 year left.
But yeah, he's got 1 year left after this year, or a guy like Berglund or Sobotka who are making in the mid-3s. I also heard that if they sign Skinner, that they might have to trade Sam Reinhart, because Reinhart's going to be looking for a payday after next year too. So I mean,
I'm going to call out Tom Laidlaw. That time that we had that league where we were sort of drafting teams or whatever, I forgot what we were doing there, Mike. And Tom was talking about Sobotka, and remember all the press that he was getting, and Sobotka was going to come in and he was going to have a huge impact. And I argued against it. I'm right. Sobotka is not that good at NHLer. He's just not.
Yeah, he's a third line guy, and he's being paid third line money. But I mean, he's being paid. I mean, they can't. Berglund's got 3 years after this year. Sobotka's got 1. So I think you could find a home for Sobotka if.
I think so too, because he's got a little grit to his game, and I definitely think you could. And I think even Bogosian with a year left, you might be able to, keep some money, eat some money, and get rid of him.
Especially if he stays healthy, which, knock on wood.
That's the whole thing. At the deadline, when has he ever been healthy?
Never. At least not since he's been in Buffalo.
Right.
All right. Great show, guys. We will be back on Friday because of the Thanksgiving holiday. I'm going to be making lots of stuffing and eating lots of stuffing. So we'll be back on Friday with another edition of the Hockey Buzzcast. For Peter Tessier, for Russ Cohen, I'm Michael Agello. Thank you for watching, and remember, without the buzz, it's just hockey.